Hello kids, welcome to this new class about passive voice. I'm so glad to have you here again, so let's start. Passive voice. Now, this could be a very confusing grammar English structure, and I have people and some students that are actually asking themselves, what is the point of passive voice? Is it really that important? Well, let me tell you, yes. Understanding the passive voice is important, is relevant, and in here you're going to learn how to use it. And it's very important for you to know variety of ways to communicate with other people. Okay, so let me tell you this: passive voice is not only due for English native speakers, and it's not only due for formal English. So in here you're gonna learn how to use it, and we'll try to do this video as short as we could, but let's do our best and we're going to learn a lot. Okay, so pay attention. Alright, so why should you use the passive voice? Very nice question. Well, there are times when you don't want to say who or what did the action. That's fair. Okay, or maybe you're trying to avoid responsibility about something you did. Okay? Or you don't want to get your mate in trouble. Or maybe you don't want to know who did the action. Or probably you don't know about it. Or because actually the object is the most important or the most interesting part of the sentence. Okay? Or maybe that's the thing that the action is happening to, not the thing that is doing the action. We don't care about the subject that much. So you can use the passive voice to change the focus on your sentence. So let's go back a little moment. To understand the passive voice, I should really first explain what an active voice is. I guess you already know, but let's just take a look at this. All right. The children ate the cake. Okay. We have subject, we have a verb, and we have an object. Now, most English sentences are more complicated than this because, well, they start simply like the subject. But what about the action? What about the object? Well, the children ate the cake. That's a simple sentence. Now, imagine that you left for work and you don't know where your cake is, so I ate your cake, but you don't know who that person was. Okay? That's where you're going to use the passive voice because you have no idea who ate the cake. Alright? And that's why you're going to turn this sentence, the children ate the cake, into a passive voice. The cake was eaten by somebody. You don't know who did it, all right? Or you could probably have like an idea of who might did this, but you're not quite sure, and that's why you're going to use the passive voice. So passive voice can be used with many tenses, and during this class you will learn how to do the changes according to the tense itself. So let's start.
Let's continue working with passive voice. As you can see, passive voice changes the focus of the sentences. And the most important part is the object. So let's take a look at the following example. If we want to write sentences using passive voice, we need a sentence but active sentences. It means active voice. We always use active voice because we have subject, verb, and object. What does she eat? Okay, this is the object. When you change this object into passive voice, you have to take into account the following structure. For example, if the sentences active is in present simple, you're going to write verb to be in present, all right? Plus past participle of the main verb. For example, Rose eats a cake. What does she eat? A cake is the object. So the object is going to be the subject here. So it's the most important part, the object. A cake is eaten by her. All right? Who is the subject? Rose. So in these sentences, we change the position. By her, so we are going to use objective pronouns. Alright? Remember, it's very important. If your active voice is in present simple, this is the grammar structure that you are going to use. Let's see another example. In this case, it's in present continuous. Rose is eating a cake. Right? We have subject, verb, verb with ing, and object. So remember, the most important part here is the object. A cake, and this is the grammar structure. To be plus been plus past participle. Now, a cake is being eaten by her. This is the best way to do it. Remember, we change the focus of the sentences. Let's continue with another example, but in this case, is in present perfect. As you can see here, these sentences is in present perfect. Rose has eaten a cake. Well, how are you going to change into passive voice? Remember, we change the focus of the sentences, and the most important part is the object. If the object is singular, we're going to use has. If it is plural, have. So this is the grammar structures. Has, have, plus been, plus past participle of the main verb. Let's repeat again the example. Rose has eaten a cake. A cake has been eaten by her. Alright? So you must be very careful with these grammar structures if you want to change the focus of the sentences, my dear students. Let's continue working with more information.
What we learned so far? Well, we can change sentences from active to passive voice. It's not that difficult, but there's a process involved, okay? We are going to review how to do these changes also in past tenses. Let's take a look at this. We have active voice and we have passive voice. We know the common order of the active voice sentences. We have subject, we have verb, and we have an object. And here we have something that is called prepositional phrase. It's an adjective. It's something you can add at any sentence. Okay, in this case, what we have, it's an active voice. My dad read the novel in one day. This is a past simple sentence. Okay? For this matter, the right order would be subject, verb, and the object. But in passive voice, it's kind of different because in the active, we have the subject doing the action to the object. But in passive voice, we're going to reverse that order or that process. In this case, we're going to have my dad, but my dad here is not going to be an object, it's going to be the agent. The agent who's doing the action to our now subject, okay? A novel in there was our object, but in the passive voice it's going to be our subject. So that is to say that there are some changes involved in this kind of structure. So a novel was read by my dad in one day. In order to create the passive voice, there's something you need to take into account. First, the subject will become the agent of the sentence, and the object on the active voice is going to become the subject here. But there's another thing to take into account, which is the verb to be. The verb to be is going to adopt the tense of the active voice sentence. That is to say, if we're talking about past simple, we have two options for changing this verb to be. In this case, we're talking about a single novel. I mean, it's a singular form. That's why we're going to use was. But if we were talking about two or more novels, that would be working with where. So be careful about it. Okay? So then, as a very mutual thing, the past participle is going to be always in the passive voice. But what are we going to change to past participle? Well, the main verb. Okay? In this case, the main verb is read. So the past participle, or the B3 verbs, as some used to call them, it's going to be right next to the verb to be. That's why we have a novel was read by my dad in one day. Okay? So, in this opportunity, what we need to do here is there are two ways to do this. We could either go with my dad or we could go with one of these objective pronouns. We could do the substitution, okay? But you need to be careful because it depends on the subject in this case. For example, if we're talking about my dad, which is male and it's a single person, we would go with him. But that's something we're going to explain in this next case. We have a past continuous tense. My dad was reading a novel in one day. Okay? In here, you're going to also create the change into passive, but there are a couple of more things to take a deeper look. For example, in here we have a compound verb. We have the verb to be plus the main verb with the ing form. Be careful about it because at the time you're changing it into passive, where you need to add two more things. Let's take a look at it here. A novel was being read by him in one day. Alright? So was is the auxiliary that it's coming, you know, by design with the past continuous sentence. But the being part is just because, as I said before, the verb to be is going to adopt the time or the tense of each of these single sentences. Since this is ing, because it's a past continuous or a past progressive sentence, that's why we're going to use here the being part. So a novel was being read by him in one day. But something that is going to be here, stick into the sentences, is the past participle. You need to keep this as a general reminder. Every single sentence, no matter what tense is, must have a verb, a main verb, in past participle when changing it into passive voice. Okay? That's a general reminder. That's always is going to happen when changing this into passive voice. Alright? So let's take a look at the last example. It's past perfect. You know how to change this into passive, but let's take a deeper look. Past perfect. Remember, in past perfect, the verb is already in past participle. There's no need to change it there. But be careful because there's always things to look at. My dad had read a novel in one day. So, you know, the auxiliary of the past perfect is the auxiliary had. So, that's the one we're using. But, as I said before, we need to use what we call the verb to be imperfect. How we turn the verb to be in perfect tense? Well, very easy. By using been. A novel had been read by him in one day. And this is how you're going to turn a past perfect tense in an active form to a passive form.